Cheryl. Thank you for joining me this morning, and I have behind me a distinguished group of citizens and law enforcement professionals and educators. And the purpose of this gathering today is to address what is an increasingly serious problem in our nation. And certainly the state of Arkansas has had experience with school tragedies, and with what has happened in Florida, on every parent's mind, on every educator's mind, is the issue of school safety. And for that reason, I have convened this group to create a commission to study school safety in Arkansas. I appreciate Attorney General Leslie Rutledge joining me at the podium today and expressing her support for this. I know that we have many legislators in the room and that you'll be conducting your own hearings. I respect that and appreciate that and believe that that is helpful. And I want to thank them for their investment in this. But it is important for the executive branch and for us to quickly look at our schools, what we're doing in terms of school safety, what more needs to be done, what recommendations come out of this, what do we learn from the incidences of school violence in the past, what gaps are there that need to be addressed. And so this commission on school safety is to look at the broad range of issues surrounding safety in our schools that will include the issue of mental health. It'll include counselors being involved in the discussion. It is about the design of the schools itself and the physical architecture of the schools to see whether we can do more to provide a single point of entry, to avoid easy access to the schools, to provide greater protection. It's also about prevention and response capability. It's about coordination with law enforcement. If you look at the fact that right now we have, I believe it's 316 school resource officers in our schools today. And that is up from 299 last year. And so we're doing better. But we also have to recognize that those 316 school resource officers only cover 1/3 of our schools. And so there is more that needs to be done. And that's what I'm challenging this commission. And I would consider it a blue ribbon commission in terms of the quality and the expertise that is being offered to support this effort. And so I would like, if we could first, before the Attorney General makes remarks, let's just go around and introduce yourself and your background. Start right here.
I'm John Cominar. I'm the security manager at the Arkansas Department of Education.
I'm Dawn Anderson. I'm a school counselor at Hot Springs World Class High School.
I'm John Allison. I'm a math teacher and cross-country coach at Bowling High School.
I'm Cheryl May. I'm director of the Criminal Justice Institute.
Let's go back here.
I'm Jamie Cook. I'm the director of the Arkansas Commission on Law Enforcement Standards and Training.
I'm Scott Bradley. I'm the director of the Arkansas Sheriff's Association.
I'm David Hopkins. I'm the superintendent for the Clarksville School District.
Bill Temple. I'm the former head of the FBI here in Arkansas.
Good morning. A.J. Terry, Director of Arkansas Department of Emergency Management, Homeland Security Advisor.
I'm Brad Montgomery, Director of the Division of Public School Academic Facilities and Transportation.
Will Jones, Deputy Attorney General, assigned to the Special Investigations Division.
And I know Sheriff Tim Helder has been agreed to serve on this commission from Washington County as well. There's others that were not able to be here today, and we'll provide you with a complete list. And the executive order that I will sign also allows me to appoint 4 additional citizens for this commission, because I know that there'll be additional needs that we'll need to fill in. But I think from the introductions that you see here that we have a very distinguished group, but also a very dedicated group from many different perspectives to take a look at this. And I've asked Dr. Cheryl Mays of the Criminal Justice Institute to be chairperson of the commission, and I've asked Bill Temple, former SAC of the FBI here in Little Rock, to be vice chair of the commission. The Attorney General will have a representative, her designee, on the commission as well, and I'd like to ask her to make comments, and then I'll also come back and address a little bit more of the specifics on the timing of the executive order. General.
Thank you, Governor, and good morning. I really appreciate the Governor's leadership in this regard and being part of this commission. And as was introduced, Will Jones, who's the Deputy Attorney General of the Special Investigations Division, will be my designee. Our Special Investigations Division for a couple of years conducted active shooter training across schools in Arkansas, teaching hundreds of teachers as well as other school personnel on how to handle the undescribable incidents if you have an active shooter on campus, just as we've seen in our state before and as we've seen recently in the state of Florida. Now we have handed that responsibility and resources to the Criminal Justice Institute and Dr. May's program to handle that training. It is absolutely imperative as a state that we protect the children in our schools. School children must be safe to learn, teachers must be safe to teach, and parents must know without a doubt that their children are safe when they are at school. That is why I'm so pleased that the Governor has put forth this commission and has organized this group of people to ensure that students across Arkansas are safe every single day. It's going to take every single one of us working together, state agencies and law enforcement, educators, state, local, county, as well as federal when necessary. So I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this commission and to make sure that Arkansas school children remain safe. Thank you.
Thank you, General, and she has been extraordinarily supportive of school safety initiatives, including the establishment of this commission. This is an urgent matter. It is an urgent matter because it's on the minds of our students and our educators. It's an urgent matter because it involves the lives and safety of our children and the future of education. For that reason, I've asked this commission to make their first report back to me on July 1 of this year. Their final report and the closure of this commission will be November 30th of this year. We want the first report to be in hand before the school year starts next year. And I have emphasized to them, as I've met with them earlier, that this is an active commission, that I expect them to be in schools. I expect them to review the safety and the assessments of security in rural schools, in urban schools, and to divide up in teams and take a look at schools across this state. We've also this will be supported from a staff perspective from the Department of Education. And I've spoken with Commissioner Key today, and he's very supportive of this, and of course any staff needs will be supported through the Department of Education. I also wanted to announce today that I'll be providing $300,000 in discretionary funds to the Criminal Justice Institute to immediately increase the support for our schools in terms of training of our school resource officers, as well as support for additional reviews of security plans that will be in place. Again, this is a broad-ranging commission that I want to make recommendations on the security in terms of prevention, in response capability, but also in terms of counseling needs, in terms of mental health, and make suggestions both in terms of action as well as any potential future legislation. With that, I wanted to invite Dr. May to make any comments before we open questions.
Thank you, Governor. First and foremost, Governor, thank you very much for your extraordinary leadership on this. He's made it very clear to us that making sure that our kids are very safe and secure in their schools and have every opportunity to reach their true academic potential is a priority for him. He's also had an extremely long history of being an advocate for school safety, and I think we all know how passionate he is about children's issues in general. I'm very humbled and honored to be a part of this extraordinary group of distinguished individuals, and we very, very much look forward to be able to provide recommendations that are going to have a true impact on our schools. I also want to thank the governor for having confidence in the Criminal Justice Institute with the foundation that General Rutledge has provided to be able to expand and to do more of the school safety programs that we do. So thank you.
So, JR, am I supposed to sign that executive order? This is an executive order to establish the Arkansas School Safety Commission, and it reflects he participates in the commission, the mission of it, the mandate, and then it requests the first report July 1 of 2018, and then the second and final report November 30, 2018, at which time the work of the commission will conclude. With this, I'm going to sign this executive order, and with that, I'm going to be asking the commission to convene and to go to work and set up a plan, and as they need resources, let me assure you, Dr. May, they'll be available to you.
Thank you, sir.
With that, happy to turn it over for any questions.
Governor, there's been talk about arming teachers. Any thoughts from you at this point?
In 2012, I convened a group of national experts that looked at this problem nationwide, and we presented options for our schools and our states to look at. And of course, the first priority is to have an armed response. And the first option and most important option is a trained law enforcement officer that we call school resource officers. They're trained law enforcement professionals. That's where the priority should be. But we also recognize that there were other jurisdictions that did not have those type of resources, or in a rural area that needed a greater capacity. And so we recommended that the states adopt model laws that would allow enhanced training, more specific active shooter training, that other staff in a school can be licensed. Arkansas, to their credit, passed a law that allowed that, and that currently is in operation, I believe, in 13 school districts. My sense is that there's going to be increased interest in additional layers of security that will add to the capability for a proper armed response with the proper training.
This list, I noticed it doesn't include either people from the gun lobby or pro-gun control groups. Is the intention to keep the discussion around the gun control out of the work of this commission?
Yeah, this is not a gun control commission. It's not addressing school safety from that standpoint. This is a school safety commission, and I've said repeatedly that I want to address things that we can agree upon and that are obvious will make a difference. And so the debate will continue. I've stated my position that I don't think further gun control is a solution to school safety. And so we want to focus on this. This is something we agree upon, and that's the exclusive mission of this commission.
So, Florida's governor's called for raising the age for purchasing firearms to 21. Is that something that you think should be looked at in Arkansas, or you're opposed to any changes like that?
I'm opposed to that. Again, I want to focus on things that make a difference. If you look at the major school shootings, many of them involve people over 21. And so that's not a solution. School safety is a solution. And so my view is that that's not something that would be beneficial to give confidence to parents that their schools will be safe. I know the Attorney General, we talked about that. Did you want to add to that?
Sure. The Governor and I spoke about that earlier, and I agree that we do not need to raise the limit for individuals to be able to purchase a gun to the age of 21. I have a very perhaps simplistic reasoning that if brave men and women are able to protect us, ages 18 to 20, either as law enforcement officers or in our active duty military with firearms, they should be able to protect themselves here at home. And I agree that as we look at the shooter in the nightclub in Orlando, the shooter who attacked our members of Congress, the shooter who attacked those individuals at the concert in Las Vegas, the shooter in Sulphur Springs, Texas, all of those individuals were over the age of 20.
What did you think of Walmart and other private businesses making that choice to raise
Walmart advised me of that decision, and I saw that Dick's Sporting Goods made that decision. Those are private commercial decisions that is a relationship between them and their customers, and I recognize and appreciate the position that they took. You have to distinguish that, though, from legislation that would be passed and further national standards that would be adopted.
Governor, do you feel in any way, based on the outpouring of support that's coming from students down in Florida and the way the president has responded in the last couple of days, how has your opinions or positions on this moved at all since what happened on that?
Well, I was with the president, and he spoke at length about his passion for doing something that's meaningful, and he had finished meeting with the parents and students impacted there in Florida. So he is very focused. We all have different opinions, but again, one of the things we agreed upon was the importance of school safety. I talked to him about what we've done in Arkansas, and that it provides a good solution, but there's additional things in terms of resources that are needed, design of school, additional school resource officers, additional options for local school districts. And so I think clearly the students have made a difference. Their actions and their vocal messaging of their concerns makes a difference to the hearts of Americans. But in the end, I think that one thing we'll quickly come around is safety in the schools, and I think we're doing a pretty good job. Our educators are working on this. I know that every school board is probably debating right now, do we have adequate security in our schools, in their local school? And I challenge every school district in the state of Arkansas right now to assess their security plans and to review to make sure that they have an adequate security plan and they're having the training that's needed.
You say you think we're moving quickly, but it seems like the students have been calling for action right now as soon as you can get it done. It's November 30th for a final report in next school year. Is that quick enough, do you think, to reach?
Well, we just put action in. We put $300,000 into additional training of school resource officers and the development of security plans. So that's immediate action today, but this also takes a longer-term approach from the standpoint of school counseling and mental health. In Florida, the lesson was law enforcement did not catch all the warning signs. How can we catch warning signs better? And that's where these experts that have an incredible background in the schools and in law enforcement need to look at how we're doing in Arkansas in identifying problems and preventive measures. So I think the students in Florida would be pleased with the action that's been taken. More significantly, Governor Rick Scott of Florida took some very specific action as well.
Governor, I understand that you had asked about funding responded, talking about deportation, MS-13. Do you know, like, if he actually responded clearly to you, or what, if he was supporting, funding more training for our teachers or anything like that? Or?
I don't know where the president is on that. I think he's certainly willing to pitch in from a federal perspective. But the people that also were listening to that conversation, what I said was, the Attorney General of the United States, it was the members of his administration, that Homeland Security was also there, and General Kelly. And so that message was widely disseminated within the administration. And I think what I advocated for was that DHS, Homeland Security grants, can be utilized for schools, protecting our children in the schools. And this is something we advocated for in 2012. I hope they'll take another look at that.
What about state funding? The recommendations out of this are, for facility improvements, more security measures. Are you going to advocate for more state funding? Is there really room in a tight budget for doing that?
Primarily, the security is something that's been provided locally. It's a partnership between the local school and their law enforcement agency that will provide a school resource officer, a trained police officer. They split the cost. And so that is something that's handled locally. Obviously, the state has some responsibility that in our per pupil funding formula, and we'll continue to look at that and to make sure education is adequately funded, but the principal burden falls on the local school district. There will be, and we don't want to have a rigid directive from the state to the local school district. So every school is designed differently. Schools will have different solutions based upon the culture of their community. So we want to give them that flexibility. But we will, and I don't want to get ahead of it because this commission is going to be looking at what more we can do as a state in partnership with local school districts. So I don't want to get ahead of them on any recommendations, but there's obviously some cost that could be associated with the recommendations. We'll look at them at that time.
Governor, you had said that you were going to, the state did not continue to have as much state partnership funds. It doesn't have to be cut a little bit in the future. It's been $100 billion every year on that. Does this maybe change that equation?
It has to be looked at both from the facility standpoint, but also the adequacy standpoint. And right now, security is not a part of adequacy. It's my understanding, and that that's something that has to be looked at. But if you add security as part of adequacy, then does that add to the formula amount? I think that's something that has to be debated and looked at and split. I mean, facilities, we have a partnership with our local school districts in terms of funding of new construction and renovation. So should that same partnership exist in the area of security, we want to work with our school districts in determining that, our educators, and look at what is recommended here. But in terms of specifically the facilities, I don't see primarily, I don't see that as an impact on the amount as much as the design. I want to make sure that our architects and our standards for school facilities include security as a priority. Are they being rightly designed? Where is security in terms of renovation and new construction?
Speaking of what the school looks like, Senator Urban yesterday had a press conference talking about safety measures, proposals for next year's session. She mentioned one of her local school districts, there were 3 rooms open, they haven't really changed anything, they don't have a security plan in place, and she proposed potentially doing mandates, tying it up with funding if school districts do not comply. Is that something that you would support?
That's an option that would be on the table. I believe that the school districts need to have a security plan in place, that law enforcement understands, that the teachers understand, and that that's practiced. And that's one of the things I've asked the commission to do is take an inventory. Whenever you go out and look at the schools, how many security plans are actually in place, how many are deficient, how many haven't practiced it. And I think based upon that inventory, we will know whether we need to do more as a state, whether there's ways to incentivize them, encourage that, or to make that happen. That's a critical, fundamental starting point, is that security assessment and plan. And if they're not in place, they need to be in place. If they're not in place, we need to figure out a way to get that done. One last question. I caught you off guard there.
Well, I have both you and the Attorney General at the table. Can I ask you about the Supreme Court's decision today regarding the 2 death row inmates? My understanding is that the one, Don Davis, no longer has an active stay on this case. Attorney General, do you plan on sending the governor a letter asking for execution to be set?
Well, sure. Essentially, the Supreme Court today denied recalling the mandate for both Davis and Ward. Ward does have an active case before the Supreme Court still. Davis does not, so he has exhausted all of his appeals. I will be discussing with my team to ensure that is in fact the case when we return today. And if he has, in fact, exhausted all of his appeals, I will be sending that notification to the governor.
And Governor, have you had any conversations with your Department of Corrections officials regarding the supply of execution drugs?
I have not. I will await any letter from the Attorney General and take the appropriate steps at that time. Thank you all for your attention to this important matter. Thank you very much.